Today we're going to start discussing India, and this will be an intro to what's known as the subcontinent. If that's a term that you're unaware of or unfamiliar with, you will become much more familiar with it by the end of this. First of all, a little review. We are going to look at ancient India first, and so I want to take a look at just some of the other ancient civilizations and some of the things that we know about them already. First of all, think in your head of the early king of Babylon who created a written law code, and obviously that is Hammurabi. Secondly, the two rivers that make up Mesopotamia. We should know those two rivers are the Tigris and the Euphrates, and hopefully you're able to identify their locations on a map if you needed to. Continuing with ancient Mesopotamia, their type of writing was cuneiform writing. What was that? Well, it was a wedge-shaped early writing system established in ancient Sumeria. What does Mesopotamia mean? And hopefully, again, that's something we remember as land between two rivers or land between the rivers, and specifically those rivers are the Tigris and the Euphrates. And finally, where is it located on today's map? It is the Middle East or modern-day Iraq. Moving on to a different ancient society or ancient civilization, who was the first Hebrew? Hopefully we remember that that was Abraham. What river did Abraham cross to start his family? This one may be a little more of a reach, but we should remember that that is the Jordan River. What was the major difference between Abraham's Hebrew family and the rest of the region? Most people seem to remember this story about Abraham and his message to his father, and that was all about transitioning from polytheism to monotheism. So that was the big difference between his family. And the issue with his two sons was an age-old dispute that today leads to the dispute, or continues to result in the dispute between Israel and Palestine. Now, today we're going to look at ancient India, and there are some terms that you're going to need to know as we go through this. The Kim vocab sheet for India that you've got is to be filled out as you go through this. Just remember, as you see these, obviously you can pause it and write down information as needed. Ancient India we're going to focus on these three topics. First of all, the Indus Valley, Harappa, and Mohenjo-Daro. First of all, ancient India was established near the Indus Valley, and that is the Indus River Valley. Just like every other ancient civilization, they were founded around a source of water, and this was theirs in this case. We have talked extensively about why it is critical that they started near a source of water, and a lot of those same ideas apply here. The Harappan's culture existed along the Indus River in what is present-day Pakistan. It was named after the city of Harappa. Harappa and the city of Mohenjo-Daro were important centers of the Indus Valley civilization. These two centers, and we'll talk in a little more detail in a minute, but they were extremely advanced in terms of their organization. That was one thing the ancient Indus Valley civilizations are known for, is their organization. And as we see, they flourished around 4000 to 1000 BC. Here's a map that kind of shows some of these different ancient civilizations we've talked about. Starting on the left, or the far western portion of the map, you can see the ancient Egyptians, and we haven't touched on them yet, but that's coming soon. You can also see the Mesopotamians in that purplish color, the Indus Valley as you continue over to the west, and then all the way, over to the east, and then all the way over to the far east is the ancient Chinese civilizations around the Huanghe or Yellow River. How is this map different from a current map of Asia? Well, obviously there are lots of differences in terms of countries that didn't exist yet, borders that weren't there yet, cities that weren't established yet. Now, one of the reasons that the early Harappan civilizations flourished was because of trade. Trade networks linked this culture with related regional cultures and distant sources of raw materials, including materials for bead making. They domesticated crops like peas, sesame seeds, dates, and cotton. And domestic animals were also used, such as the water buffalo. They also used mud brick for building. I'm going to skip through a few of these real quickly, but why would trade networks be important? Well, we've again talked about just why trade is necessary in a lot of different parts of the world, so that countries could specialize, or areas could specialize on what they were good at. These people of the ancient Indus Valley also used irrigation to increase crop production. And that allowed some big-time advancements in agriculture. The Himalayan mountains are a key thing to the Indus civilization. These mountains provided a continuous source of water The mountains, we'll look a little later about how they create a border to the north of India, but they also provided important timber, animal products, and minerals like gold, silver, tin, and semi-precious stones that were traded throughout the Indus Valley. The Himalayan mountains are the largest mountain range in the world, the home of Mount Everest. Now, the two major cities are Mohenjo-Daro and Harappa, and on your Chem sheet, they're just listed in one box, and that's the key thing we need to understand, is that they are the two most important cities of the ancient Indus Valley. Again, they're known for being impressive and organized in the way they were laid out, and they have well laid out plumbing, drainage systems, including indoor toilets, which, if you think about the time period, is pretty astounding. Over 1,000 other towns and villages also existed in this region. Here's a map again that shows where these two civilizations were located. And as you can see on this map, in white is the border that is the Himalayan mountains to the north of India. Streets of Mohenjo-Daro were sometimes narrow, that led to more private neighborhoods. Many of the brick houses were 2 stories high, which again was very advanced for the time period. Thick walls, high ceilings that kept rooms cool in the hot summer months, and India is extremely hot almost all year round. Now, the Harappan civilization was mainly urban and mercantile. That means urban, we know that term to mean it was city-like, and mercantile just means there was a lot of business or a lot of merchants going on. Inhabitants of the Indus Valley traded with a lot of different places, from Mesopotamia to southern India, Afghanistan, Persia, and there you see some of the materials that they traded for. Again, trade was extremely important for this ancient civilization. Now, there are 4 theories as to why the ancient Indus Valley civilization collapsed. 3 of them are based on ecological factors like intense flooding, decrease in precipitation. The 4th hypothesis was that there was an invasion by the Aryans. There are, it's unknown as far as which one is the actual correct one, but one way or another, that civilization no longer exists today in its truest form. So a little review, kind of answer these in your heads as it goes through. First of all, the Indus River Valley civilization was founded along what river? Obviously, that's the Indus River. What allowed this civilization to flourish and grow? Well, there are a number of things, but the biggest one to hit on and to remember, or biggest 2, are organized cities and trade. And then what mountain range to the north provided a continual source of fresh water? That would be the Himalayan mountains. Now, I want to look just a little about more geographical things that tie not to ancient India, but not only to ancient India, but also present-day India. First of all, we're going to look at just briefly at how India's agriculture and industry has evolved into what it is today. We're going to look at political and environmental changes. We're going to look at just a little about its history and culture. So first, India is trying to develop its resources to meet the needs of a rapidly growing population. Second largest population on Earth behind China. And it is extremely jam-packed into a pretty small area. Here's some terms to know. Subcontinent, monsoon, green revolution, reincarnation, cottage industry, prime minister, pesticide, caste. We're going to look at some of these in more detail than others, but those are some terms that will come up through this. First of all, India and several other countries, Pakistan, Bangladesh, Nepal, Bhutan, Sri Lanka, and the Maldives make up the South Asian subcontinent. And a subcontinent is a predominant piece of land that kind of jets off from the rest of the continent. Obviously, if you look at a map of Asia, India is one of the easiest places to find because of the way it's situated, because there is that huge portion of land that jets out from the rest of Asia. That's what we know as that's what's known as the subcontinent. So again, it's a large landmass that's part of another continent but is distinct from it. Now, the Karakoram mountain range as well as the Himalayas form India's northern border and separate it from the rest of Asia. It is the tallest mountain range in the world, as we said earlier, averaging more than 5 miles in height. Most of India is warm or hot all year. With its large population, that adds even more difficulties. The Himalaya mountains block cold northern air, and so it keeps all the hot air trapped in there. One thing that affects India are monsoon winds. These are seasonal winds that blow steadily from the same direction for months. And they also influence the climate. In particular, they influence the seasons available for rain. For many, many years, monsoons made it so that India had one really rainy season as well as one really dry season. And from an outsider's point of view, that would be kind of cool in some ways, especially if you were able, during the dry season, you don't have to worry about plans getting canceled because of rain and that sort of thing. But on a deeper level, it provides a lot of trouble, because during the dry season, farming and agriculture is extremely difficult. Today, they do some things to try and meet their food needs, but it was very different in the past. Since India gained its independence, its government has made an effort to improve farming, and the result is something called the Green Revolution. And now they have many industries, and part of it is because of something known as outsourcing. We talked about that with China. It also applies a lot to India. Recently, American computer companies have opened offices in India. You know this if you've ever tried to call your Comcast internet provider at midnight when the internet fails and you get somebody over in India. Mining is also a major industry. Many Indian products are manufactured in what are known as cottage industries, and when you think cottage, think of home, because this simply means a home or village-based industry in which family members, including children, sometimes supply their own equipment to make their goods. Things produced in this way are cotton cloth, silk, rugs, leather products, and metalware. So how did the Green Revolution allow farmers to plant more than one crop per year? Well, the big thing that it did, and it again has to do with monsoons, is that if the farmers relied only on monsoon rains to water their crops, they could plant only once per year because of these rainy and dry seasons. The government then built darns to collect the water, and the darns stored the water and spread it throughout the irrigation during the dry season. And so it allowed them to now plant twice a year, which ultimately just doubles your crops and allows you even more food to feed your people. Like the United States, India is a democracy. It is known as the world's largest democracy because of its massive population. Most important difference is that it has a prime minister, but not a president. They have a current second prime minister, second in command, kind of like our vice president, who is trying to help India's poor, and there are a lot of poor. Approximately 1/4 of the population of India is below the poverty line. If you go to visit India, you'll see a lot of this. Videos of India show a lot of this. There's all kinds of footage. It's very well publicized that their population is extremely poor and malnourished. So she's done a lot to provide low-cost housing and give land to those who don't have any, and they've also tried to extend voting rights. I'm going to skip through some parts of this. Their dominant religion is Hinduism. 80% of the people are Hindu. And they still are recovering from some of the things they suffered when the Aryans set up kingdoms there. The Aryans gradually blended the practices of their local people to form Hinduism. Now, one of the other things that affects India still today is what's known as the caste system. And the caste system was a rigid system of social classes. It's based on your ancestry, which means you are born into it and there's no way out. It still influences life, although now it is unfair and unlawful to be treated poorly based on your social class. These are the social classes, and we'll get into more of that later on with an activity that we will do. The British were the ones that ruled India for a while through the mid-1900s. India was a British colony until finally under Mohandas Gandhi they gained their independence, and Gandhi did it through non-violence, which was very rare and unheard of at the time. They won their independence finally in 1947. East and West Pakistan were created as a Muslim homeland, and East Pakistan is now Bangladesh.